Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome to this Monday's productivity tip of the week. I'm going to talk today about the best filing system for your emails. But first, if you haven't met me yet, I'm Laura, your balance and productivity mentor for Managing Myself. I help busy professional working mums with too many balls in the air to be more organised and intentional with their time so that they can spend more quality time with the ones that they love. So today we're going to talk about the best filing system for your emails. Now, why is this important? This is important because studies show that the majority of professional workers are spending at least 2 or 3 hours a day checking and responding to emails. Now that adds up to 10 to 15 hours a week. If you could reduce that down to, say, 1 hour a day, you're freeing up around about a day a week of time to spend on things that are more important. Just imagine what you could do with that additional time that you've just created. And I think that's especially important if you're one of these people who ends up going through emails in what should be your personal downtime, because in that instance, the time that you're saving is effectively your own time. So question for you: how often do you have to go back and refer to an email after you've already filed it? Now, this is the key question for today's session. How often do you need to go back and actually find an email that's already been filed? And compare that to how much time do you spend when you're going through your emails, looking at an email and deciding which folder it is that you want to file that email in? Or else you can't decide which folder to put it in because it doesn't seem to fit in any folder. And then you find that you've just spent too much time thinking about what folder to put it in. So in the end, you just leave it in the inbox. And after a period of time, your inbox has built up to so many emails that it's just overwhelming. Every time you open your inbox, there's just a sea of emails and it's anxiety inducing. So I'm going to give you some examples of ways in which I have in the past chosen to file my emails, and we'll get to the essence of the problem here. So I'm going to give you an example from my first job after qualifying as an accountant. How I chose to structure my emails back then was I spent a lot of time communicating with our customers. So every customer that I had a contact with had a separate folder. I was managing a department of people, so every staff member that I managed had a separate folder, and then every department with the company had a separate folder within my emails. This ended up with around about 80 separate email folders. And you can imagine, even if I knew instinctively which folder I wanted to file a particular email in, I'm then scrolling through this massive list of folders trying to find the right one to put the email into. And I wasted an enormous amount of time deciding where I was going to file my emails. I used that system for years and years and years, and it never occurred to me that there might be a different way to file emails. Until a couple of years ago, when I read a book by a guy called Cyril Perpignan, who wrote Work Smarter, Live Better. And he talked about this idea of hats and creating folders within your email system that correspond to the different hats that you wear within your role. So, for example, my email structure then became a set of folders with the following headings: strategic management, operational management, finance, insurance, staff management, investor management, and admin, and a couple of others. So I ended up with, cut it down from this sort of 80 folders or whatever to something more like a dozen folders. But let's take an example of one of my staff members who works in supply chain. She might send me an email with a particular problem within the supply chain that is making her anxious and is stopping her from doing her job appropriately. It might be a problem which also has a financial implication on the business, and it's something which is serious enough that I want to bring it up at our weekly executive team meeting. Now, do I file that email within strategic management, operational management, or staff management? because the actions that I'm going to take as a result of them fall into each of those buckets. What I'm trying to get at is this kind of the time you spend worrying or trying to work out which folder you're going to put the email in is essentially wasted time. And the real epiphany on this really came to me just earlier this year, where I realized that what I'm doing here is total control freakery around how I'm filing my emails. And I was feeling like I had to keep every email and I had to know exactly where to find every single email that had ever been sent to me. But the truth is that the search functionality within email programs over the past few years has actually improved no end. I rarely go back to try to find an email that I've already filed, and I'm just wasting a huge amount of time trying to optimize the folders that I'm putting things into. So let me explain to you the solution to this problem, which I've been following all through 2020 and has really helped me to come up with a process which is much more efficient in terms of dealing with emails. I just have now 3 folders, and these are entitled Action Required, Awaiting Response, and Halfway to the Bin. And I'll just explain to you a little bit about what goes into each folder. So Action Required, any email in my inbox which I can't deal with immediately and really needs my attention and I need to craft a response that's going to take some time, that goes into Action Required. Any email where I need an input from somebody else or I want to delegate that email to another team member, I reply and send the email off to somebody else who I need the information from, and that original email then gets filed into Awaiting Response. And that's my repository for any email which I need to follow up on later. And then the Halfway to the Bin folder, this is about emails where you perhaps need some information but only temporarily. So for example, it's got some information on some directions to a particular meeting that you need to get to at an external location, and you only need those directions on the day that you've got that meeting. So that kind of email goes into Halfway to the Bin, and then once that meeting has happened, that can be deleted. So your homework for today is to go away and reconcile yourself to the fact that you do not need to be creating a whole categorization within your email server. You just need 3 folders, and I'd like you to give this a try, see how it goes. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, but just give it a try for let's say a week, and I want you to try and clear all of your inbox down to 0 into these 3 folders. Next week I'm going to talk about how to triage your emails. I'm going to talk about the actual workflow that you want to go through when you're checking your emails every day in order to process your emails as fast as possible and to move on to the more interesting things. All the best, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.